Welcome to episode 53 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I speak with Megan V. Walker and her experience with portals. Megan serves as an outstanding example of someone who comes from a low-code background, but combined with her knowledge of HTML, CSS, and her brother, who happens to be a developer, has been excelling in delivering portals for quite a few years now. Megan shares with us, among other things, some of the JavaScript libraries she uses in portals, as well as her struggle with both imposter syndrome and pride. So if you happen to be a self-professed low-coder who's been wanting to get into portals, or maybe didn't think they could get into portals, sit back and relax and listen to Megan tell her journey. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. Me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and my co-host, Scott. I could really use a Coke Duro. Scott, how's it going?
Very good, Daryl. And yeah, now you come to mention it, actually. Yeah, I really could do with a Coke, yeah. Is it because I'm wearing a red t-shirt?
It's because you just survived like the hottest day on record for the area that you're in. 50-some degrees, and we're talking C's and the F's here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hot. That's for sure. But it's been good. It's been good. You know, bit of sunshine. You know, chilling out by the beach. It's all good.
Okay, all right. You got a beach to chill out. That's good.
Yeah, and I've been looking at the rain back in the UK as well.
Here in Indiana, there aren't a whole lot of choices.
Okay. Oh yes. Surely you must have like lakes and stuff.
We have lakes and reservoirs. My brother-in-law has a little boat he took my kids out on, and they had a great time getting flung around in the water and jet skis and stuff like that. But it's not a lake. If you could see the other side at all the times, it's not really that. I don't know. It just doesn't seem as good as like a Great Lake or the.
Yeah, but if it's got a jet ski, I mean, any bit of water
it's
with
not
a
a
jet
swimming
ski
pool,
must be good, right?
But there aren't any beaches usually. There's very few beaches. It's just kind of like muck. Anyway, who knows? So so the guests that we have, we've had before, and we're having her back on. And at first, I was a little impressed by some of the areas that Megan Walker's our guest. I'll start with that. But I was impressed at what Scott was suggesting for her to come on and talk about. And I was like, I had no idea that she was capable of doing these things. And I think she may have felt that about herself as well. And I think she's learned. And from what I'm hearing, then she's going to take that knowledge and going to help to spread it to our listeners here, and kind of show that the low-code platform of Power Platform even goes all the way to portals as well. So Megan, how's it going?
What an introduction. Yes, it's going well. So I am recycled guest. I've been on before.
Recycled? Recycled. We're just trying to make Lisa jealous. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, she doesn't know. Shh. Maybe she will never find out.
You were so great last time. You've come on again. That's the point. It's not recycling. It's just no scraping the bottom. No, I'm just going to stop now, right?
Yeah. So no, you're right. I think yeah. Some of the things I never view myself as being like that much of a technical person. But then if I stop and think about where I started with portals and where I am today, it's like night and day. It's completely. I have to take stock in where I am today, even when I'm frustrated with something, and realize like there was a time where I didn't know what liquid was, and then it's completely different these days.
So when did you start this journey? Like, how long have you been working in portals?
Oh God, I'm trying to think. Okay, so Scott, your memory might be better than mine. When was it that we met in person in Amsterdam? What year was that? When we met? Is it 2018?
Probably,
maybe?
I don't know.
Something like that?
Yeah, something like 5 years ago, perhaps.
Yeah. So we went to a summit of some kind, and it was in Amsterdam. And I remember meeting Nick Dolman for the first time as well. And just around that time, I'd started delving into blogs that were about portals specifically, because I had discovered Liquid, and I was like, well, if I just have discovered it, then other people wouldn't know what it was. So I started writing, and I was breaking it down where it was like, okay, well, how can I just do some really simple things like on a case and show like, hey, the case is, got this priority or whatever, and using stuff on there. And I remember meeting Nick and him saying, do you want to record an episode of my podcast? Sorry, we can mention other podcast, but
yes,
on another podcast.
Refresh the cache.
Yeah,
they mention us sometimes.
Refresh the cache. Good.
The
okay.
last time they
Refresh
mentioned
the
us,
cache.
it was like, who wants to listen to that much of XRM Toolcast? I was like, what? Oh, come on. But it's probably too bad.
So it's just friendly competitive banter.
Friendly
That's all it is. Yes.
So he said, do you want to
lift more
record
than
an
I can,
episode
so I
of the
can't say much.
podcast? Yeah, be careful what you say. And I couldn't believe that the Nick Dolman wanted me to be on his podcast. And I was like, well, what have I got to talk about? And it was basically, that was kind of like the starting of it, and figuring things out and then sharing it in the way that I share my things is I try and take something and really simplify it, because I know that if I have struggled to get to this point, other people will struggle to get to that point as well, that are not developers, and not even citizen developers, but people that just want to make something look a little bit better by understanding and knowing something, like using Liquid in your portal. So it started probably about like 3 or 4 years ago.
So for the purposes of our listener, that may not know what Liquid is.
It's plural
yeah,
here.
I mean, I'm making
no,
an
the ones
assumption
that don't
we
know what
have,
Liquid is.
A listener. Well,
yeah, there's only one that doesn't know.
Short,
Okay, all right.
A short,
it's my mum.
Summary of what Liquid is.
For my mum that doesn't know, we're not talking about a glass of water or a beverage. So it's basically just I don't know what you would call it in developer speak, but for me, I would just say it's kind of like a code where you can do things like if-else statements, and it means that I can create templates for my portal and truly customize it and check the data and say, if the data is this, then do that, otherwise do something else. So I don't know what you would call it in developer speak. I would call it like a basic programming language, maybe. It's not really programming, is it? What would you call it? The two of you that are smarter than me, what would you call it?
I think that's a brilliant description of it. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Would you say that it's low code? Would you say it's low code, or would you say?
Well, I think so. Here's the thing. I think to me, and I feel that there are some things that are very much a code, like things that a developer would know, like C# or JavaScript, or being able to sit and type out stuff like that. To me, you're a developer. But I have built websites like for probably 20 plus years. Like I've learnt HTML from scratch. I can basically build a website and type it all out. I wouldn't do it now because obviously there's tools that you would use and you'd be stupid to do that. But that to me, I don't view that as like development code. I don't view that as like a coder, or it's static, I view that to me as low code. But it's the perception of, I don't think that that's really like a hard thing to do. But then there are other people who'll be like, oh my God, well, I can do that. It's code. And I'm like, it's HTML. It's not code. But so I think it's a perception, isn't it? That it's where you are in your learning path and what you know and understand, and what you take as being, well, that's just second nature. It is what it is. It's, the sky is blue. Code is code. But so, yeah, I don't know if Liquid's like low code for some, for me, I guess, but others, maybe it's really, really difficult. I don't know. It's perception.
Well, it's interesting because, the low code movement is so prevalent, isn't it, across the rest of the platform. And I don't know, my feeling is that the portals really haven't been having that same kind of focus in terms of that low code, because, PowerFX is such a big deal now. It's like everything should have PowerFX, whereas portals is sort of playing a little bit of catch up. I mean, I think Liquid came from, was it Shopify?
Shopify, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a standard, right? Templating language.
Yeah.
But what was your first? I mean, when you first looked at it, did you just simply think, oh, look, it's HTML, I could do that, no problem, because you'd had all that experience doing the marketing kind of stuff before?
No, I was thoroughly confused by it, and I understood the basics of, okay, if user, then display the first name, else display welcome guest or welcome customer or something like that. So I understood the basics. I was like, oh, great. But then I remember, I don't know if you know Kyle Hill, but with Kyle was somebody that I was talking to him about it, and he said, oh yeah, but then you can go across and say, okay, well, you've got the user, but then you can drill into their account, and then you can get into the cases, or, depending on what template you're on, what entity it is that you're sort of looking at. And that's where I was that took me a little bit longer to grasp. And now I'm writing web templates and I'm putting in fetch XML statements and I'm doing all kinds of things with it. But it wasn't a quick, it didn't click immediately, but once it did, then I'm like, okay, that's it. And I know that I can do this. It's just figuring out what syntax is a little bit harder for me to get immediately, but I'm getting a lot faster at kind of knowing, I know I can do this. That's the syntax that I need, or that's, a query that I need to write. So
it's funny, as you're talking, I was almost thinking, you know what, you could be talking about Power Automate Flow expression language, because in a sense there is an analogy there, isn't there? Because when you first start looking at the expression language for Power Automate Flow, it's just I don't know what's going on here. And then suddenly you realize that there's loads of power you can do, and you can add in all sorts of different queries, and, you start to unlock the power of it. Whereas on the surface, it's I can only do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. It's that old adage of you don't know what you don't know, right? Where you like I said, I knew that, I can display the user's name. Great. I can put different fun things in. I can put emojis in. Just kidding. But I can do things. But then
we haven't mentioned emojis yet. How come we've not mentioned emojis?
Not really. Until you kind of start to then see what other people are doing, and you realize that actually, people have been doing this and using this for a long time. I'm just catching up. And then you see people like Nick Dolman or Colin Vermando, people that have written and done these amazing things years ago. And then I'm like, oh, okay. But then that's when I started to kind of have my own ideas and my own blog posts that I wrote about doing stuff in portals, where other people were saying, oh, that's really cool. How did you do that? Or that's really awesome that you wrote that. And what to me has been amazing about sort of the progress of the journey is being, so this has happened a couple of times. I don't necessarily want to, I'll give them plugs. So there's two people that have told me that my blog posts have helped them on their journey. And now I'm reading their blog posts thinking, oh, thank God they've written that, because I wouldn't know how to do it. So it's kind of I put stuff out there for other people because I thought, well, this might help somebody. And then two people that are writing amazing content. So Franco Musso and, God, I can never say her name, Ulrike, and I can't pronounce her surname. So maybe we can share links in the podcast show notes. But
yes, please,
two people
please
are doing amazing things. Yeah, absolutely. That I've now used their blog posts, and Franco, I've used his to learn about the web API. So that to me that's the power of sharing stuff, isn't it? That you think, okay, this will help somebody, maybe, and then you put it out there and somebody coming back to you saying, your blog post helped me at the start of my journey. And I think, what? That's amazing. So yeah, it's nice when stuff like that happens. Goes full circle.
Yeah, I mean, that's the true power of community, isn't it? When everyone's just kind of working together and helping each other in a sort of bi-directional way. The worst case scenario I always find is when you open up the web browser searcher of your choice and you type something in, and it's none of these links are vaguely related to what I've just searched for, and it's am I the only one doing this? But then you have to kind
sometimes
of,
you are
subtly refine this. Yeah.
Sometimes you are the only one.
And then you have to question, should I be doing
Yeah,
this?
exactly. And then
If
you're
no
like,
one else is doing it.
I must be doing this wrong.
Surely-
Yeah, that's
surely
when you learn
somebody
to ask the question in different ways. Like, all right, so the way I'm asking this question is not
Yeah.
right because no one else is asking this question. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But definitely we should share those links because, I think portals is one of those things that it's probably, once you get into it, you can see the power of it and you can start to sort of, apply it to all the sort of things. But I think it's quite hard to discover. I mean, there may be even people who've not even really even used portals today, maybe they're being put off by.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, I got into portals when it was ADX Studio, and I worked this is when I was still living in Atlanta, and worked for a software company, and we were using CRM, and it was the job of myself and my boss at the time to where we knew we needed to implement a portal because we wanted clients to be opening up cases. And it was between the pair of us, we struggled and we managed to get something online. And it was when, you had to like dig into the pages and go onto the server. It was completely different. And it kind of scarred me a little bit, I'm not going to lie. And I was put off. And then I ended up where a portal came up as part of a project for a Microsoft partner I was working for. And I'd said that I knew ADX Studio portals, and someone was like, "Oh, you know portals?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." And so I got put on the project, and I loved it because now I could see like how much it had changed, and for me, how it felt like it was easier to make changes. And I'd had my own business when I was in Atlanta as well, and I'd done web design, and mostly like WordPress sites and things like that. And maybe there's very few people, but I love CSS. I just think it's such a challenge just to get everything looking beautiful and looking good in a mobile device and on a tablet. And I just find it such a challenge. And so combining that and seeing what I could now do with the portal, I was so proud of like, I could make something that this is their main website and here's the portal. And other than the URL, you kind of, oh, okay, well, where am I? Am I on the main site? Am I on the portal? And I don't know, I love the challenge of it. I like that it's not really HTML, but knowing HTML really that helps with it. Knowing the CSS, that helps with it. So it feels like it's a bit of a unique skill set, I think, that I find it might be hard for people to get into if they have never done anything with websites at all. But then the way you build it is not the same as building a regular website, which also adds to the excitement of it.
It's nice to hear that you kind of you used it, you had a bit of experience and it scarred you, and then you came back to it with a little bit reticent to admit that, I do know portals. And then suddenly you were surprised at how much it got better. I mean, that's really good to hear, because sometimes when you're on that journey and you see in the incremental changes, you don't realize actually how much is changing. But actually, if you do that cold turkey, don't use it for a few years. Then
it was quite a few years, yeah, absolutely.
But CSS is one of those things that, a lot of people say, oh, CSS is not a programming language. And then other people say, yeah, CSS is definitely a programming language. Have you seen that website, CSS Zen Garden? I mean, it's literally been around since the late 90s, I think it was. I've just looked it up. It's still going. CSS Zen Garden. Basically, the idea is when CSS first came out, it was like showing what you could do with CSS. It's like a single page that's literally the most simplest, like load of divs, and everything is done with CSS, and some of the stuff you can do is remarkable.
It's a beautiful, I think it's a beautiful thing, like CSS. I really do. Like it's and to see, like, even I remember when I figured out how I could make something that was a circle and it was just CSS, and you've got a circle and then you've got like a nice sort of dashed border around it, or like basic stuff. But as these things progress and then you see what people are able to do with them, and then I'm like, I'm going to put that in my next portal. I'm going to put that in the next portal. And to me, I like that, that element of a client will have a set of requirements that I want the portal to do this. I want my customers to be able to log in and do X, Y, Z, whatever it might be. But for me, one of the things that I do like, because I like to have an element of control of things. Scott, you know me very well. You might know that I like to be in control of things, but I like the element of being able to actually say, right, they've got a somewhat of a design that they think they might want, but for me to be able to actually just do it and say, here's what I think it should look like, and then just say, that looks great, and just go off and kind of have that sort of design element to it as well. Because I think somebody said to me, oh, who's the web designer if you're doing the development? I'm like, that's all I've ever known. You do the design, you do the development.
You're the web designer and the developer.
Exactly. So you don't get that luxury, especially when you're on your own as well. You've kind of got to have a bit of both aspects of that thing.
So are you, Daryl? Are you a CSS Zen master? Is this something? Have you done CSS before?
I kind of feel like, I don't know, this may have been an American show rather than like a global show here, but there was a cartoon I was on called Captain Planet. Have you heard of this at all? No, probably not. Mm-mm. So like there were these kids that had these rings of power. And one had like heart, earth, wind, fire, and they combined their powers together to form Captain Planet. I feel like Megan and I could combine our powers together to create like a Captain Planet of Power platform or something. Because
what would you bring to the table? I've just told you.
I can't get a rhombus to save my life on anything. Like I can't get the height correctly or the width correct. Blah. I mean, I can do selectors fairly well because I got to go like find things to select things, but like outside of that, no. Just because you can make Zen Garden in CSS doesn't mean you should make it. Like that's kind of like where I'm coming from.
I knew it.
So,
I could see that nasty. You looked like you'd tasted something nasty when we started talking
when
about
I was saying how I loved it.
I could
really?
see it.
So now I know who to go to with all my CSS questions. I'll go to Megan.
I honestly, I do like, but I'm sure it's the same for you guys when you're writing code, Daryl. I'm sure that if there's something that you can't quite figure and it's niggling you, and it's the same sort of thing. I'm like, if there's something that the alignment's off or something's not taking and I can't figure it out, that's a challenge, and that part of it I really, really love. Absolutely.
So this is the surprising part. Is I feel that same way about coding, but CSS just like too hard for me. Like, it's kind of like, who wants to do an all black puzzle? I don't want to, but you give me one that's like a Disney puzzle as like, 15 different movies in it and you can like separate them easily. Oh, this is for this movie. That's for that movie. Like, I love that puzzle because there's like 1,000 pieces, but it's really easy to know where they go. Like, that's fun. But if it was like an all black one, I wouldn't really like that. Or the time my brother said, I asked him what he wanted for his birthday. He's like, just a picture of you. And so I actually bought him I made a puzzle online that was just me. And most of the puzzle was black. Like it's my actual, like my picture of my professional picture I had on most of my stuff. And there's mostly like green background and then a lot of black.
Oh, that really, really serious, the serious black and white photograph that you have. Yeah, that's
well, it was a black and white, but most of it was, it was fun. It was fun.
I could see it like a Where's Waldo kind of, or Where's Wally kind of Daryl edition. You could like, we could do a whole thing.
Keep him behind a tree.
Maybe a little project.
Yeah, we'll need to get that picture from Summit where I'm like trying to grab Matt Barber from behind.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you were in that session, Megan, but I think Scott was. We were in the team's gallery mode, and like I'm huge in there because I guess I was really close to my camera, and Matt's like next to me, and so I was like gonna go over like try to like, bite him and grab him, and he actually stopped mid sentence what he's saying. He's like, Daryl, what are you doing?
Like such a distraction. I don't know. Yeah, so unprofessional.
Someone dared me to do it.
Back to portals.
Yeah, back to portals.
Portals.
Back to portals.
I mean, it's just boring. Let's just not do portals. Yeah. Portals. Yeah. So I mean, coming from that angle about low code and stuff, what's the biggest problem you found with looking at doing what you need to do, what the customer's asking for something. Has there been something that you've had to use any tools to solve, that you've had to add in to portals?
Yeah, so I think, honestly, the biggest problem is there are so many resources out there, which is amazing. And obviously, the three of us, are all very lucky and very blessed to know very smart people, and we know that we've got a circle of other MVPs and people that are not MVPs that you can go to and say, I'm having this issue, has anyone seen it? Or, has anyone got any suggestions, whatever. My issue, and I think this comes back to almost feeling like I am playing somewhere maybe I'm not supposed to, and someone's going to come up and go, excuse me, miss, you're in the wrong room, right? So there's that element of imposter syndrome where I feel like I'm probably not supposed to be doing this, but no one stopped me yet. So I sometimes feel like I've got a question. It's probably really, really obvious. I'm going to make myself look really, really stupid and ask it. But if I don't ask it, I've got no one else to help me because I don't have a team of people. I don't work for an organization. So that's probably the most challenging thing, is sometimes not knowing what I don't know and feeling like I'm going to make myself look stupid. Now, I'm very lucky in the sense that I have a brother who's a developer, and he will just say that I'm stupid anyway, and that's fine, but that's just a brotherly love thing to do. And so I'll ask him a lot of
Daryl's
times.
brother wanted a picture of him. So, I mean, I think your brother and Daryl's brother are very different relationships.
I don't know. Well, I have two brothers, so maybe one of them's that way. Maybe one. I mean, one of the one I played. It was NHL '95. He came up from college. He never played me at all before. He's like, I'm going to play in this. We played it for like 4 hours straight. I beat him every game. In the very last game, he beat me like by one. And he threw his controller down, pointed at me. He's like, I'm never playing you again. And he never has.
Oh, well, yeah,
That's
maybe not
brother.
Quite the same. Anyway, back to Paul's. So yeah, what I like is finding tools. And this was another thing where I first found a tool that I thought, I wonder if I can use this in a portal. And then thinking, should I? Am I allowed? Is this okay for me to do this? So
Do you think there's portal police?
No, but it was, again, there's that mental block of like, am I in the right place? So there's one that I found that was called PDF Object. So that's a JavaScript utility for taking like PDFs and embedding them into a page. And Scott, you actually helped me with this because I could get it so far to where I'm like, okay, I can get it there, but I wanted to do certain things and be able to click and switch the PDFs that were embedded between one PDF to another. And it was one of those things where I'm like, I can get it so far, but I know that I should be able to do this, but this is now not just low code. This is now getting into, you need to be a developer to know this. And so Scott's definitely one of the people where he never would make me feel stupid, even though maybe I'm asking a stupid question. But I think that's the thing, is when you don't know, are you laughing behind my back, Scott, when I ask you things and you're thinking, she's stupid? No, I know you're not. But that's the thing where I find something, I think this could work, and it might be my only option to make something work. So I have to kind of like give it my best shot. But that's the challenge, is knowing that, okay, there's something out there I could use and I can get to this point, but I need to get just a little bit further. And it's just the block of knowing that if I knew a bit more from a coding perspective, I wouldn't struggle quite so much. So we can talk about sort of a low code approach, but there will always be a barrier or a sort of ceiling that I will hit because I'm not a developer. So yeah, this PDF object, and then there's another one, data tables, that allows you to, so basically I create a lot of web templates where I'm building, instead of using like an entity list and displaying it, I maybe want to do something where I need hyperlinks to go to other places, not just a link to to the record itself. So data tables allows me to then make these tables look really, really pretty and put like search boxes and filtering tables at the top and do really nice things. And then there's full calendar as well, which Colin Vermander had written about that, where if you use the out-of-the-box controls for, you've got an entity list and then you want to kind of make it look like a calendar, that's great out the box, it works fine. But again, if you want to do anything different and you want to be able to style the page that it's going to go on, you can only actually put it on the full page template and maybe one of the other templates, which you can't actually get into to make any changes to. So if you want to style it, you're a little bit screwed. So this full calendar lets you essentially have your custom web template and then build it all and create, was it Ajax? Is that? See, I'm back in a world where I don't know what I'm talking about, but Ajax something, creating
it's a cleaning
something.
product, I think.
Creating some kind of JSON file and pulling it in that way. So yeah, finding these tools that are essentially available to use at no cost to the client and for me to be able to figure out, they're a godsend for someone like me.
I'm frankly kind of impressed. I'm really impressed that you've been able to.
Be careful,
your
don't
list of tools
mansplain.
are all JavaScript libraries. Like that's impressive, Megan. That your list of tools, like, you know, when Scott's like, "Hey, Megan's been doing all this awesome stuff in Portals. We should have her around." I was like, "Great!" It's like, "What is she doing in Portals? I didn't know she dabbled in Portals or knew anything about Portals." And it's like, "Oh, let's see some of the tools you're using." And just to list, like, I was expecting like the Portal data mover, like in the XRM toolbox or whatever that thing is. Big mover.
Yeah, which is
I was
awesome.
expecting like, some of those, but no, you're just JavaScript library. Data tables. We're using that in my current project right now. So the fact that you're able to take the JavaScript library and importing and using and referencing JavaScript libraries it's not easy. And the fact that you've figured out how to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Bravo.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely, you say, "Oh, I'm not a developer," but you know what? I think, it's there is no like point where you pass an exam and suddenly you say, "Yes, I am a developer." It's basically what you're doing now. This is the secret. It's nothing special.
I don't know. I guess
holding these developers up on a pedestal. It's like it's just importing JavaScript libraries and using something else that someone else has done.
Yeah, but okay. So for example, the data tables one, for example. So that one of the portal projects that I'm working on at the minute. So I always try and start from unless the client wants their portal to look completely different from their main corporate website, I always start from their corporate site and I basically take their CSS file, I take whatever's on sort of their main site that's doing weird and wonderful things if it's needed, and then I basically pull it in. So I'm working on this client's portal, and they have all kinds of things that are going on that they've got into like a bundle JavaScript file. So everything's kind of like in this file. And so the data tables just isn't displaying. And I was able to kind of like, and this is another thing where before I wouldn't know, like open the console, see if there's any errors or whatever. And so I'm doing this, and my brother had said, "Look in the console, it'll tell you what's wrong." So I look in the console and then I can see some reference, error. And then I Google it and it says, "Oh, it's because jQuery is being called twice." So I was proud of myself for even figuring out and getting to that point.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, but how do I get it to only be called once? I don't know, because it's in this bundle.js file that I don't know how to remove something or not put, because you've got to put it in for the data tables to work. I didn't know where to go from there. So bless him, my brother helped me out and helped me fix it. But it's stuff like that where before I wouldn't have even been able to get to the point of figuring out what was causing the issue. So I feel like I get further, like I keep getting further and further, but then it's the final fix that a lot of times evades me. It's just out there, but I can't quite grasp it without someone else's help. And that's what I don't like, is I want to be able to figure it all myself.
Oh, Megan, it sounds like it's kind of funny because you're dealing with both imposter syndrome stuff, and you're also dealing with pride stuff. Like, I don't want to need somebody. I don't want to.
Is this
I don't
about
want
to be a
admit that I don't
counseling
know
session?
these things. And it just,
I
just found it so
counseling
interesting
session?
that those are there. Usually one's on the other, one side of the other.
Psychoanalyzing you now.
Well, this just the many.
No, it's
I'm
true.
realizing
It's
now
true.
that I have to change the title of this episode though, because I was going to be like PCF, for not PCF, portals for like low code people. Like this is more like low code with the Brotev brother, title. Like you kind of you need that other person to go to help you over those little humps, because you could spend 5 years without any help and never figure it out. But you can get 20 minutes of Scott and 10 minutes of your brother, and you can also boom, look at this. I know, look at the amazing stuff that I'm able to do.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And then learn from it. I mean, that's the thing is I always I don't want someone to just fix it. I want someone to then. So if Scott says, oh, well, if you do this, this, and this, I'll be like, okay, but why would I have done that? And why would this not be the right approach? Or why would that not have worked? So I think to me, it's always, I need to understand. I have this, need to know, well, what did I do wrong? Or what could I have done differently? Or what could I have done better next time? So that hopefully then I've learned from it in my next project. I can take that in. I mean, the Portals web API I used for the first time last week, and if somebody had said, oh yeah, you'd be able to use the Portals web API and even know how to do that, I would have laughed. I'm like, no way. But so I think to me, I hope that somebody, if they're not a developer, is listening and wants to get into Portals. It can be a really, really long journey, but it's also a really exciting and fun journey, and I think there's so much that you can learn on a Portals project. It is unbelievable because you're not just learning web design and CSS and all that stuff. You've got to understand the data. You've got to understand how all of the records in the portal works, and the fact that you're dealing with data, you're not dealing with configuration in the same way as a regular Dynamics 365 project or a Power Platform project or whatever you want to call it. So I think to me, a Portals project is almost more exciting. I sound like such a dork, but it's to me, I get more passionate about that because I've got so many pieces that I'm able to work with and be challenged by, that I think that's more exciting than just.
And you're making websites that people could use, which is cool. So you can say, look, I made that website, and your mum can see it as well.
Absolutely.
But I hope your mum's listening. Hi, Megan's mum, if she is.
Deirdre, hi.
Yeah, but yeah. So it's interesting what you're saying about the fact that you sucked in the client's CSS and website from their public website to put into the portal, because I think that does seem like a really good way of learning a lot of this stuff. Because the thing about CSS and HTML is just there's infinite resources out there at your fingertips. You can just see how because that's the thing, isn't it? Everything's available. Yeah, you do obviously get some bundling and minification and stuff, but on the whole, you can find out how websites work by viewing the source and using developer tools to inspect it. But so if you're doing some work for a customer and they've already got styling, you can just sort of reusing that. I think that's the thing, isn't it, about Portals? If you install all of the samples, the Contoso stuff, you could be forgiven for thinking that's it. You get that styling and that's what you have to use.
Absolutely.
Because it takes a bit of work to then realize that actually behind there, it's just HTML.
Mm-hmm. And I think, so they'd come to me and they'd had a go and they said, okay, so here's what we've got and we've managed to display this, but it was basically just the standard portal and some entity lists that they'd figured out, and it looked awful. And getting their style sheet and the fonts that they're using, their corporate fonts, all the rest of it, and being able to do that and say, okay, well, here's our starting point, and they're just like, oh, and like you said, they think that a portal is the out of the box thing that everybody thinks it is. I don't know if either of you have seen, I mentioned Franco Musso before. He has created a portal that essentially looks like Spotify. It's absolutely
Yes,
beautiful.
I've
it's a
heard of
work
this.
of art. Yeah,
Very, very
it's
cool.
so cool.
Very cool.
And that also, if people see that, they're like, oh my God, that's a portal. You just don't think that that's what you're going to potentially end up with, or what you could end up with. So it's very cool what you can do. I love portals.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, if our listener thinks it's that same person thinks that, yeah, Contoso portal is what you get, then look further. I think
absolutely.
looking at what other people have done with portals and how far they've gone customizing it really is an eye opener. But you know, it's interesting because this probably why, you know, we kind of we've come full circle. We were talking about portals not being very low code, but I think, you know, the fact that it is based on HTML and CSS, we can't hide from that. Ultimately, the low code ways to do that, there's probably other design tools like, you know, the Adobe suites and stuff like that to create a low code CSS HTML style, which you could then bring into your portals to then style it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think as well, seeing what other people have done, I think the more people that sort of share what they've done with portals and see like screenshots, you know, that somebody's put together, I think is helpful as well, to then be like, oh my God, I'd never thought of doing that. I'd never thought of doing that. And bringing that as inspiration into other projects. Because like I said, to me, the ability for me to present something and say, okay, well, I know you didn't ask for this, but I think it would look better like this in this style, because they don't think that far ahead, because they, again, just think, oh, it's just a portal. So yeah, no, I think we need more people doing work in portals, for sure.
Yeah, so come on, listeners. So if there's one thing that you could improve, what would it be? What would be the one thing, if you could get your wish come true about portals? What would it be?
I think there's still Daryl, I don't know if you mentioned that you're on a project. I don't know if you yourself do portal stuff, but one of the things that I still find is there's so many he's shaking his head with a sad, regretful look in his eye. I think the one thing that is still a bit fiddly is when you are doing things with, let's say you've got an entity form and you want to have certain things pre-populated. So you can use the metadata and you can say, all right, well, the person that's logged in, we've got a contact field on that form. Let's automatically populate that. We're on a page and we can get the ID parameter from the URL, and we want to use that to maybe populate another field that's based on a lookup to another record or whatever. So I've been doing that quite a lot, where somebody is like booking some kind of event and we need to get the event from the ID, but I don't want to show that field. That is where then I'm like, okay, well then I have to use JavaScript. So that to me should be a very, very simple thing, just to say, okay, well, I've already got metadata available. How about you just add that as an option to just say, okay, well, let's pre-populate it and then let's hide it. Job done. But no, luckily now I've done it enough times to where I just go to a little thing where I'm like, let me grab that code so I don't have to remember it again. What do I need to do? But those are the sorts of things where, or doing things conditionally. Okay, well, if this field is yes, then show this field, otherwise hide the field. So those are the sorts of things that I would love to see. That is what could then take it to becoming more low code friendly, is not having to say, well, I can do all of this, that's fantastic, but oh god, now I have to go into my JavaScript bank and do that.
Well, now that PCF, Power Apps code components are in preview in portals, maybe those kind of things that you just described there could be solved with a code component in portals. Because, like, for example, the hidden, lookup, that's something that I you could add a code component on a form, and then it wouldn't render it, and it would just pull the lookup value from the query string and then pass it to the save context.
Maybe
we could work together on those.
Yeah, but stuff like that where it's still fiddly. Like I have to go in this place to do that, and this place. Oh, and then I've got to go back to JavaScript. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, once you've done it a few times, then you remember, and that's fine. But it's the newbies, the people that can get so far and then not even know that. Oh, okay, well, that's how I would then take it that little bit further. So.
Is there anything else on the Portal side of the fence that you want to make sure we get to? Because I have something I want to bring up that's totally unrelated, and I want to make sure we've
I
fulfilled
love
our
things,
Portal.
Daryl.
Our Portal, especially for me, because you never know what it's going to be. But anyway, so I'm assuming that all Portal discussions are good. We can bring it to a close.
Unless we want to do 2 or 3 other episodes, I think we are good for now.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So
the box is open. Worms are everywhere.
So Megan, whenever I use a emoji or a Unicode character in a project, I always think of you, because that's kind of where the first idea came from. It's a simple idea, but it was from that. And I'm using it currently in my current project, where we wanted to show we had a grid that we wanted to show. We want to show whether they're active or not. We're just putting a little like green checkbox in there, basically. Mm-hmm. And then the UX people that I was working with introduced me to Flycon, FLICON.io, using the Microsoft Fabric assets and the Microsoft Fabric MDL icon library. Have you heard of this or seen this or anything else? This font library?
Mm-mm. No.
Okay.
So
feel free to go to FLICON.io. I think it's Flycon. Like an icon, but with an FLI in front of it. I don't know. It's by Chris Kent. It's a MVP on the not Power Apps, but the SharePoint side. And so like he's got this whole thing where you can take it and you could do all these custom colors and stuff, and it uses that particular font library to make that exactly the way you want to make it, basically. So if you think of like wingdings back in the old days with like Word, like think of it like that, where it's much more, many more options than just Unicode than the Unicode character, because it uses ones that are private Unicode characters in that font family to do, this color, that color, this color, that color, or all that other kind of stuff. So if you're ever in a situation where you need to do that, I highly recommend checking that out, because I just found out, I was like, I think this is like right up Megan's alley.
Can you just then copy and paste it in the same ways you can with an emoji?
Yeah, it's like more Unicode characters than you get out of the box, right? You just have to make the font family be the Fabric MDL2 icon. That's the name of the font family. And then once you've done that, then you can utilize any of these icons that are listed on that FL icon library. It's a really nice little way to go through and do that. So our UX people was like, hey, we could do it this way. I was like, oh, this is some awesome Unicode characters. I didn't know that was in there. And then I was like, oh.
But did you feel like you were betraying? Were you betraying me a little bit if you use that?
Betraying you? No. I'm standing on shoulders.
Because it's not you're not using. I'm just teasing. I'm going to go and check it out, because that actually sounds really cool. Because one of the things that annoys me about the emojis is there aren't enough different colors of things. Like you get to the point where I want a different colored check or whatever. So yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So as long as you can control the font family, you can use all those things. But most of the stuff within Dynamics you can't, unfortunately, or then in the model-driven apps you can't. But anyway, so that was just something that I found like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh, this is right up Megan's alley. I thought I'd share that with you, and hopefully our listeners found it beneficial as well. Scott, have you ever heard of this or known this or anything else? Am I way behind?
Yeah, I've seen it, but I've not actually used it.
Okay.
It probably would be something you could bring into a code component in model-driven. Yep. But yeah, the emoji in pick lists and choices, that just, when you show that to people, they're like, I've got to have these everywhere. And suddenly, like in tabs, for example,
over the top
tab names.
No,
and
there's too much.
Like suddenly you look at it, it's like everywhere, and it's like no going back. It's like opening Pandora's box, and suddenly
and suddenly there's no words, there's no letters used anywhere. It's just all emojis.
Well, then you don't have to worry about language, right? You don't have to worry about
no, exactly.
German,
everyone understands
English, right?
Yeah. But it's so cool when you can filter a table, right? When you can have the column filters, the drop down filters, and you can filter by with the emojis, and it just makes the model-driven app so much usable and pretty and kind of approachable. I think it's
funny.
It's definitely
it's funny how that took off. And I did some work for I know we're running close to time, but I did some work for a client the other day, and I was doing some training for them, and I logged in and there were emojis absolutely everywhere, and I'd never done any work for them before, and I just had a little chuckle to myself like, wow, it really has come full circle.
It's bigger than you now, Megan. It's bigger.
It's massive. It's crazy. It's still going, so good time.
That's hilarious. You can never get away from it. Never get away from it. It's always gonna be with you, isn't it?
It's good. It's a good thing, though.
Well, Megan, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for stealing yourself away from Lisa and your podcast, the What's Up. Is that the entire name, or is there like a Power Apps part of it too? I forget.
The Up podcast.
The Up podcast.
Yeah.
All right.
Not What's Up.
Can we have be on brand here?
Yeah, I've listened to every episode, not trying to geek out, but I run and I need things to listen to, and that's a great show to listen to while I run. And Jonas does it too, right? And he's working out too. So
he does.
Yeah, exactly. So if our listener doesn't listen to the Up podcast, they definitely need to listen to it. So we need to get that in the link as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, and
awesome.
your co-host Lisa, we were previous guests before, so yeah. Besides the Up podcast, I'm assuming our listeners can reach out to you on LinkedIn and Twitter. What are your handles there? We have like one with Megan V. Walker, one with not correct or something.
Yeah, no, if you just search for Megan V. Walker, you will find me wherever. And it's meganvwalker.com if you want to go to the website. And I might put some blog posts out again at some point. I haven't done any for quite a few months, which is very rare for me. So I'll get back.
Because you've been busy with portals, right? So
no, because I've been busy training and walking 20 miles and stuff like that. So
we haven't talked about that. I mean, that's just awesome. And the fundraising and everything is just such a good
I've been raising
story.
money for the Alzheimer's Society. We raised over £5,500, so which is pretty incredible. So anyway, meganvwalker.com is where they can find me, and everything will be linked from there.
Awesome. Well, Scott, that's how our listeners can get a hold of our guests. How can our listeners get a hold of us?
Well, Daryl, you can get hold of us by email by cast@xrmtoolbox.com or on Twitter and LinkedIn at xrmtoolcast. Love to hear from you. I don't think we've actually received any letters yet, have we?
We had one question that kind of almost was like a letter, but I'm like, I'm not going to let that one slide. We need an actual legit letter. So So this is kind of like when you go to a conference and they're giving like a free Xbox away, and there's like 50 people in the room. You're like, oh, this is pretty good odds. I got a 2% chance of winning this. I better put my name in the book. This is what this is. Like, there's not that many things to choose from. So you're very, very likely going to win whatever this prize is that Scott has up his sleeve. I don't even know what it is. It's like a mystery. It's like your middle name each show. It's always a mystery. We'll see.
It's always a mystery. Always a mystery.
All right. Well, Megan, thanks for your time today. Thanks for now I have another resource to go to if I need help in portals, because I've never touched it before, or CSS.
And then I'll go to my brother with your question to get your answer, and then give you your answer back.
Yep, or you're going to come to me when your brother's asleep.
I think we need your brother.
Scott's out.
We need your brother as a community resource as well, Megan. I think,
You can have him on the podcast if you want to. We can come on together. Anyway, thank you for having me again. I've really enjoyed it. It's been fun, so thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks, Megan. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Megan. Bye.
This has been the XRM Toolcast with Jonas Rapp and Daryl Labar. If you have any questions for Jonas or I, or suggestions for future episodes, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com or tweet to XRM Toolcast.